Command says in a statement that the victory in al-Qseir is a clear message to those who take part in the aggression against Syria, especially the Zionist entity. The Army General Command calls on the people of al-Qseir to return to their homes within few days. The preparatory meeting for holding an international conference on Syria begins in Geneva as Russia indicates that there is some change in the attitude of the West towards Syria. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Yara Krikorian from the News Center in Damascus. The General Command of the Army and Armed Forces has declared that the armed forces were able to restore security and stability to al-Qseir at dawn today after clearing it of terrorists following a series of accurate and successful operations carried out in the city and the surrounding villages, which resulted in killing a large number of terrorists and the surrender and escape of others. The army units, the command added, are now opening roads, combing the area and removing landmines and barriers.
The Army General Command said in a statement that the victory realized by the Army heroes is a clear message to all those who took part in the aggression against Syria, particularly the Zionist enemy and its agents in the region and its tools on the ground, that the armed forces are always ready to confront any aggression against our dear homeland. The command stressed that its battle against terrorism is going on in order to restore security and stability to every inch of Syria, affirming at the same time that it will regard with mercy the misled who turn themselves in, whether those who fled from Qusayr or from any other area in Syria. The General Command called in its statement on the citizens of al-Qusayr to be reassured and to return to their homes in a few days. The command reassured the people in general and the citizens of al-Qusayr in particular that those who were used by the armed men as human shields have all been evacuated and the wounded of them are being currently treated. The command also stressed in the wake of its successive victories in its war against regular and systematic terrorism that it will not hesitate to strike at the armed men wherever they may be and on any inch of the Syrian land, as the homeland soil is sacred, never to be desecrated, and those who try to desecrate it will either die or surrender. The command pointed out that the documents found, which prove the involvement of certain Arab regional and foreign sites in terrorism on Syria, are being scrutinized and verified and will be disclosed to the public in due time. The Army General Command concluded its statement saying that the Syrian army, the protector of the homeland, extends thanks to the Syrian people for their constant stand and support for the army and promises them to be always up to challenges to bring about more victories, God's willing.
The strategic city of al-Qseir along the Lebanese borders was fully cleared of jihadi terrorist groups who were supported by regional and international forces and financed by the Gulf states to destroy the Syrian state and people. The country's national flag was rehoisted on the public buildings and sites in the city of al-Qseir in Hom's countryside after our armed forces this morning restored security and stability to the whole city. The army carried out qualitative and prompt operations to restore security and safety to the city after the killing of a big number of terrorists and the surrender of others. The army destroyed the terrorists' hideouts with all the weapons and ammunition inside them and the tunnels and barricades where the terrorists were fortified. Our armed forces also dismantled dozens of explosive devices planted by terrorists in the citizens' houses and on the public roads to hinder the progress of the army. Our armed forces are now continuing the process of looking for explosive devices and criminal tools which the terrorists left behind in al-Qseir city. In a new confirmation of the organic connection between the Israeli enemy and the armed terrorist groups in Syria, the spokeswoman of Tzef Hospital in Safad, north of occupied Palestine, has revealed that a wounded man from the armed groups in Syria died in an ambulance before arriving at the hospital, where another wounded man of the armed groups had previously undergone a surgery. Iran congratulated the Syrian army and people for clearing the city of al-Qseir from the armed terrorist groups. Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister for Arab and African Affairs Hussein Amir Abdullahian said that the Iranian government and people congratulate Syria for the great victory achieved against the armed Takfiris in al-Qusayr. Abdullahian called for referring those who support these groups with weapons and arms to trial because they help terrorism to spread in the region and kill innocent people in Syria. Our armed forces continue their operations in the northern east part of Hama Governorate, restoring security to a number of villages and towns, including Al-Zaghba and Balil, where Jabhat al-Nusra gangs wreaked havoc. The coming operations carried out by the army revealed the involvement of regional and international sides in the aggression on Syria. Anti-armor rockets and foodstuffs of American, Turkish and Saudi origin were found, as well as a factory of explosive devices. Life is back to normal in Al-Rashidin neighborhood in Aleppo after it has been cleared of terrorists by the army units. Aleppo governor carried out a field tour in the neighborhood and listened to citizens' complaints and demands. He gave directives for restoring full services to the quarter. The beginning was a cleaning campaign on a large scale with the participation of volunteers who cleaned streets and sprinkled insecticides. Welcome back. In Geneva, the tripartite meeting, which includes Russia, USA and UN, has started this morning in preparation for an international conference on Syria. The meeting will include Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Bogdanov, US Assistant Foreign Minister for Political Affairs Wendy Sherman, and UN Special Envoy Al-Akhdar al-Brahimi, who will be accompanied by UN Deputy Secretary General for Political Affairs Jeffrey Feltman. The meeting aims at preparing for an international conference on Syria, which will include representatives of the government and the opposition. The Russian Foreign Ministry has declared that using the UN Human Rights Council to support one side of the crisis in Syria constitutes an obstacle in the way of preparations for the international conference to be held in Geneva on the Syrian crisis. In a statement published on its website today, the ministry said the Human Rights Committee's experts admitted that the armed men in Syria, who are increasingly joined by extremists, are the side that is perpetrating illegal death sentences, torture and kidnapping, and are using children to commit various crimes. The ministry said such atrocities by the extremists are being met with silence, particularly the scenes of rape and violence against women, despite many testimonies and news media reports. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov said there is a change in the stance of the West towards the crisis in Syria, which started to realize that the only solution to the crisis is the political dialogue. He pointed out that for more than 2 years of war, the eyes of many of them opened to see it is a bloody dead end with no exit, but through starting a political dialogue between the Syrians themselves. Bogdanov, who is representing Moscow to the tripartite consultations between Russia, the US and the UN on Syria, due to be held in the UN headquarters in Geneva, today said that the discussions will focus on the participation of the Syrian government and the opposition in the upcoming international conference on Syria, noting that he and Deputy Foreign Minister Gennady Gatilov will meet representatives of the Syrian opposition in Geneva. Bogdanov clarified that the preparatory meeting will mainly discuss the list of participants and the level of representation to the international conference. The USA has declared it is currently preparing for an international conference on Syria to be held in Geneva, but voiced uncertainty regarding its date, agenda, or the list of participants. The American State Department spokeswoman Jennifer Psaki said, and the Secretary of State for Political Affairs, Wendy Sherman, and Deputy Secretary of State for Middle Eastern Affairs, Elizabeth Johns, have left for Geneva, where they will hold a preparatory meeting for the conference with their Russian counterparts and the UN envoy to Syria, Al-Akhdar al-Ibrahimi. Psaki said the American and Russian delegations, together with al-Ibrahimi, will discuss the agenda and the participants in the conference. She said she did not know whether this meeting would be decisive for the convention of the International Conference on Syria. There is a lot of challenges, and it is not easy, as we have a well-organized regime in return for an opposition that still tries to maintain self-coordination, she added. Finally, Turkish demonstrators who are demanding the resignation of Istanbul police commanders took to the streets once again in Ankara and Istanbul, challenging the rule of Recep Tayyip Erdogan. In Taksim Square, which has become a focal point for the demonstrators who accuse Erdogan of leading an oppressive regime, thousands set up camps and clashed with the police, who used tear gas and water hoses to disperse the protesters. Eyewitnesses said that clashes continued all night long in Tunceli province, during which demonstrators set up barricades and pelted police with stones. The Turkish trade union has already declared a strike, which included sanitation and electricity workers. The strike is expected to last for 2 days. With this, we end our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more details about Syria and the region, and to view this bulletin again, you can always visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. Now to latest business and market news with Vani Genjian after a short break.